What is going on, guys? So today we are back with another Pokemon Masters video, and it's been a couple of months since we've gone over all of the sync pairs in the game. So just like we did in December, we're going to go through and we're going to basically dedicate one video to all of the 3-star sync pairs. We're going to dedicate one video to all of the 4 stars and one video to all of the 5 stars. So we are going to go over those Monday, Wednesday, Friday as of this week is what I currently have scheduled. If it's changed, if this isn't Monday, then something came up, so to deal with it. Basically, the way that I have everything set up here is, so all of our strikers are in a group right here in this little layer. Then we have all of our techs and all of our supports. This is not like their placement. We're just going to go through one by one, and we're basically going to try to define where they're going to be. So I will open with this statement before we put any sync pairs in any place. Tier lists are completely subjective. It is extremely hard not to put any type of bias into a tier list. So my opinions are going to differ from yours probably greatly in some extent, but I am going to try to keep as an objective opinion as I possibly can with each sync pair. And last time that we did this back in December, I had this big formula that I did, and I put everything together in that. This is going to be straight from the hip. We have no real like formula or anything going into this. This is literally just me going one by one down the list in all of the sync pairs and trying to place them where I feel like they fit best. It's going to be kind of difficult to do this with sync grids actually being a thing now. I want to say that because some sync pairs don't have sync grids, I'm going to try to place them where I feel like they fit without sync grids. If a character has a sync grid already in the game that is expanded, that probably is going to boost them up a tier or possibly 2 depending on how good their sync grid is. But if you want more like thoughts on sync grids and stuff, I do have, you know, tons of videos on those that are out currently. So let's start out here with Pikachu. So Pikachu is actually as a striker, okay? So remember, no sync grid. As a striker, I actually have to put it in the B tier. I don't feel like it is actually that amazing at being a striker. With its sync grid, I feel like it would probably be up in the A tier because it has a great deal of utility after it gets its sync grid unlocked. So anyways, I feel like B tier is a pretty solid spot for Pikachu because it does provide some heals, it does provide a little bit of damage, and it can get some speed back. So I feel like that's pretty decent. Now, Brock with Tyranitar, so it does have an AoE damaging move. It's got some decent stuff. Its passives are okay. If you pair it with a Acerola, it can be pretty decent. I also I think I have mine up to 4 stars now, and it's decent even at 4 stars, but I also feel like it's kind of in the B tier. It's not like amazing at anything. It's not really horrible. It's one of the better strikers that we have in terms of 3 stars, but it's still not like amazing. Maybe it could be in between B and A. We might change that here in a little bit though. I'll leave it there for a second so I can get through the rest of these and we'll talk about it. Next we have Bugsy, which is kind of Bugsy is interesting. So it doesn't really have a ton of like actual damage output. It's one of the only bug type strikers that we have though, so it does have some utility in the fact that it's just limited in terms of what we can do with bug types. But in general, it does have a Mega, which I do feel like is kind of slow. I do feel like it's also a pretty mediocre, pretty B tier placement for me. Price, on the other hand, is one of the best strikers that we have, not only in the 3-star category, but in the game, period. I mean, he's got some great freaking moves. He's got some great stats. I definitely feel like Price is an absolute S tier in terms of striking damage in the 3-star area. I would feel very comfortable putting him in the S tier right now. Norman. So Norman's kind of weird because he does have a really high damage output and a really bad drawback with the recoil. I do feel like his damage output, if that's what, as a striker, your main goal is to output tons of damage, I do feel like he fits closer to the A tier, but because of his recoil damage, I am going to stick him closer to the B tier. He's good, but he's not amazing. Plus, being normal type doesn't really have a ton of advantages with any other like super effectiveness or anything like that. So kind of just not a huge fan, but he does actually put up some really good numbers sometimes. So I will give him some credit there. Next, we actually have Tate, and to be honest, I just don't ever use Tate. Like, I just don't use it. It is a dual type attacker with Psychic and Rock, so I guess that's kind of cool. I personally just don't really like it very much. I don't ever use it. I don't really have a great use case for it. Probably just going to stick it in the C tier because it does have some use cases. It's not like it's completely useless, but honestly, like, it's just kind of not hitting on a whole lot. Barry, on the other hand, once you get up to Empoleon, this little guy can actually be pretty freaking good. I think Barry is a solid A tier. He's got AoE damage. He's got, I mean, good stats. He's got good numbers. All around, I think that Barry actually deserves a solid A tier placement. Next, we have Rourke, which Rourke just actually went from Cranidos up to Rampardos recently, so I would actually feel pretty comfortable. I mean, it's kind of weird because as a striker, it's got some very, very powerful moves. It does have some recoil damage, which kind of makes me fall in line with what I said with Norman. He does have an insanely high HP. He has the highest HP in the game. I would feel comfortable with a mid A or mid B to low A tier right now. I think that's pretty secure. Iris, here's another one that has a sync grid. With the sync grid, I actually think that Iris could be a solid B tier. Outside of that, though, I just don't really care for Iris. I'm gonna stick Iris down here in the C tier, unfortunately. I just not a huge fan. Karina, on the other hand, with Lucario, I actually have this boosted at least to a 4-star, and I mean, insanely high damage, insanely good moves. I would say that Karina and Price probably fit into the same category. They both have an insanely high damage output. Karina doesn't have anything that's like AoE type damage or anything, but still it's insanely good. And if you like need something to put your 3-star power-ups into, Karina is like perfect. Next, we actually have Avalugg with Wolfric, and I'm just not even going to beat around the bush. I mean, as much as I love Avalugg, he's really, really cool. Definitely a D tier striker for me. Next we have Hapu and Mudsdale, our last one here. I actually have to throw these down here in the D tier as well. I just don't like them. I just don't like that sync pair in general. They just have really low damage. It's just not like, it doesn't really have a good place to fit, and especially with other sync pairs that we have in the game, maybe their sync grid will boost them up quite a bit, but not right now. They're just not very good. So the ones that are on the line here, let's try to reevaluate these. Do I think that Brock is better than Pikachu? I personally do. I actually do think that without sync grid, mind you, without sync grid, I think that Brock is more useful to me than Pikachu is. So I would actually feel comfortable putting it on the A tier. Is Brock as good as Barry? Actually, I would say yeah. I would say that's pretty comparable because Barry's AoE damaging move is quite low in terms of base power. I'm pretty sure Tyranitar's is going to be a little bit better than that. So I would say that's pretty even playing field for them. Now for the recoil boys, do I feel like Norman is better than Pikachu and Bugsy? Not really, honestly. I feel like it's probably going to be in the same league as those. I just don't feel like they're actually going to be hitting on a whole lot. I mean, the high attack is really great, but the recoil is going to be a huge drawback for me. I personally I'm not really feeling it. Rampardos, though, so this one's kind of interesting. I think in terms of like just raw damage, I feel like it would actually deserve the A tier, but with the recoil, okay, I think that it's going to be better than Norman. Let's put it this way. If I'm comparing apples to apples, Norman and Rourke have very, very similar outlooks on their damage. So they both have really high damaging output moves, but they do have the recoil. The fact that Rourke actually has at least a type that can do super effective damage, I think that should output a little bit better in terms of your damage with Rourke versus Norman. So for that reason, I'm going to put it closer to the A tier. Is it better than Tyranitar or Empoleon? Maybe if you're like a kamikaze player, like, yeah, maybe you want to jump in and just do a ton of damage and then die. Sure, I could say that it probably will output more raw damage in a quicker span of time, but you're going to lose that sync pair rather quickly. So this is my list for strikers as of March 2020. I think that's a pretty sound list. Now, like I said, with sync grids, price just gets even better. Pikachu definitely gets better. Iris actually gets better. I'd say that, you know, without considering sync grids, everything is good here. If you consider sync grids, I definitely would say that that Pikachu and Iris get bumped up one tier. Pikachu definitely deserves an A tier slot, and Iris is mediocre at best, so B tier would be fine. Okay, so now let's move on to some techs. So techs are really hard to actually analyze because you're really trying to judge them on either damage or support, because those are like the really two big things that you want to do in Pokemon Masters. But the tech rolls kind of have almost like this hybrid situation, or they fit into this just totally disruptive type situation. So, okay. This is going to be difficult, but I'm just going to try to base it on how useful they are in Team of 3. So are they actually going to be great in terms of what they contribute to a Team of 3? So let's start with Brock and Onyx. Honestly, horrible. I do not ever even think about using Brock, and no, it's just bad. I don't like it. Voltorb actually got a evolution into Electrode recently, has one of the highest speeds in the game, so it actually does provide quite a bit of utility with just its speed, but it also actually has Last Word, which is actually pretty freaking good. Outside of that though, it's got some mediocre moves. It's not really great. It can paralyze the opponent, which I guess can synergize with other electric types because of like sync grids and stuff. I feel pretty good with a B tier placement here. Kind of just all around kind of mediocre. Next, we actually have Erica. So Erica without her sync grid is pretty just meh. With her sync grid, I would say that she probably deserves a B tier, but without it, I would say definitely a C tier right now. I don't feel like she actually provides just a lot of utility to the other players on the team, like even in co-op or anything like that. Like, she does have a little bit of status conditions that she can do, like she can inflict a couple of things, but she's just kind of meh, and it's not even like mediocre meh. It's like, oh, I don't want to choose Erica ever. So the only time I ever use Erica is when like bingo calls for it. So next we actually have Janine, and I kind of feel like Janine is in a very similar spot with Erica. Synergetically with other poison types, she can be kind of decent, but like, I don't know, she's just kind of in like this really weird spot where I don't ever think about using Janine. Like, I never run to Janine and say, hey, I've got to stick this girl on a team. I just don't ever do it. For that reason, I think she just probably deserves a C tier. She's not horrible. She definitely has some use cases, so I don't feel like it deserves D tier at all. But C tier is pretty okay with me. Next, we actually have Brawly, and Brawly actually got a evolution up into, well, Brawly didn't evolve, you guys know what I mean. Makuhita got the Hariyama evolution, which actually does have quite a bit of bulkiness to it. And as far as like a tech unit, it doesn't really ever provide me with anything that I feel like I absolutely need. So I also kind of feel like it falls into the C tier. It's just kind of meh. It's just not really like amazing. It does have quite a few use cases though, so I feel like it doesn't really deserve D tier at all, but it just in general, I feel like it's kind of meh. So yeah, we'll leave it there for now. Flannery, on the other hand, I do actually really like Flannery. Without her sync grid, she's kind of mediocre, but with her sync grid, I definitely think that she deserves an A tier. So if I think she deserves an A tier there, she's got to deserve a B tier without it. I think that that's pretty solid. I think she's just as useful as Surge. I think that's a pretty good assessment there. So I feel comfortable putting her in B. Now we have Winona, and Winona for me is very, very, very cool. So I'm going to stick her in the B tier because Rainy Day, she's the only character that has Rainy Day right now, and she just provides so much utility to the other teammates with her rain. I mean, Blue can benefit off of it. Rotom can now benefit off of it. Mew can benefit off of it. I mean, there's a lot of different things out there that can actually benefit off of the rainy weather now. So I definitely feel like that's good. Not only are those like strikers and Elisa good at, you know, taking advantage because of thunder, but also all of the water types out there get a small little boost off of it as well, if I'm not mistaken. So I really like Winona, and when she gets her sync grid, I think she's just gonna get even better. And MP refresh on Rainy Day win. Okay, so then we have Crasher Wake. So Crasher Wake actually is in a pretty interesting spot. He's got a lot of unique things about him. I almost want to say that he's probably gonna fit into the A tier for me. I mean, he has Dire Hit, which, well, he does. I can't remember if he exactly has Dire Hit, but he has a way to raise crit rate, which is very, very good right now. So I definitely feel like he is one of the better 3-star tech units out there. Next, we do actually have Candace. So she's the only one that can actually start a Hailstorm, and that's amazing. But outside of that, she really doesn't have anything that, like, I mean, I guess she can do a little bit of like ice type damage. She does have a little bit of damage in her, but outside of starting like a Hailstorm, she does okay. And we don't really have any units that like amazingly benefit off of Hailstorm. Price can get some buffs out of it if you consider his sync grid, but outside of that, I don't really have a whole lot of there's not a lot of love for Candace right now. Sorry, she's C tier for me. Next, we actually have Clay with Palpitoad, who did get evolved up into Seismitoad recently, and even after that, it does have some decent physical attack. I will give it that, but it's just not very good. Period. Like it just really isn't. I'm sorry. It just doesn't have a great use case. Literally, there are like, I would much rather go with any other free to play physical striker than Clay. As much as I love his redneck accent, he's just not there for me. Bryson actually has a really, really unique spot here because he is he is going to be able to mitigate a lot of stat increases with Haze. I think that is so freaking good. It's one of the best like just disruptive moves that we have in the game right now. I am going to say that he deserves a B tier because honestly, that stat mitigation is great. How you can basically remove all status, you know, increases back to 0. But outside of that, he literally has nothing. Even in the Mewtwo event, where he's used absolutely almost every single match that you go into, as soon as they use Haze, they dip out and they switch out to something else. That says a lot about Bryson. He's just, I mean, he does have endurance and stuff like that too, if I can remember correctly. So that's actually really good. I do feel like that deserves B tier though. I mean, as good as Haze is great. And Haze probably deserves an A tier, but everything else that, like, the baggage that comes along with it, personally brings it down to a B tier for me. Next, we have Ramos with Weepinbell, who did actually get Victory Bell evolution recently. Honestly, I kind of feel like C tier is where he deserves to be. It's not amazing, it's not bad. He does have his use cases, but he's just not really like, I don't know, he's just not really there for me. I don't ever like actually like, I joke around in videos saying that Ramos is like too strong, but I don't actually think that Ramos is that worthy. He's just not really that good, unfortunately. Next we actually have Mina, which for a little while Mina was the only fairy type that we had, which honestly we didn't get one that's amazing, but Mina definitely is, I would say that right now she still probably deserves a C tier. Just because there's not a whole lot of fairy type damage out there. Valerie, which we'll talk about in the 4-star video, definitely shakes things up a little bit when we talk about fairies, but still not really like, I don't know. It's not like Mina gets really, Mina doesn't get any worse because of Valerie, and Mina doesn't get any better because of Valerie right now. Like the fairy strikers are still, or the fairy types are still really just poor in terms of their use cases. I just don't don't really have a lot to say about the fairies right now. Last but not least in the text, we do have Oak with Mew. And I do have to say, Oak and Mew is really great. I definitely feel like they deserve some S tier. Definitely S tier. So just the insane amount of AoE damage that they have, plus their passives, plus their stats. I would say that Mew is probably my #1 recommendation for what to boost in terms of tech units from 3 stars to 4 stars, hands down. He deserves it more than any other 3-star tech sync pair in the entire game. If we consider strikers and supports in there as well, he's definitely in my top 5. Like, absolutely an amazing striker. As a tech unit, he's an amazing striker. I know that sounds funny, but you basically get AoE damage with Swift. You get the chance to lower enemies' stats and stuff. And then you also, after you use a sync move, switch into like this crazy dominating, like just elemental type attacker where you've got Thunder, Blizzard, Fire Blast, like all this different stuff. Or is it Fire Blast or Flare Blitz? Either way, it's got Fire, Ice, and Electric on top of Psychic. So it's got a ton of utility, and it's just an amazing sync pair right now. I definitely think that it's an S tier, and I would highly recommend promoting it to a 4-star if you do have the materials for that. So with the text out of the way, let's jump into our supports. So there's not a ton of 3-star supports, but straight off the bat, we do have our main character plus Torchic, and I am in love with this sync pair. Torchic is amazing. I cannot wait until Torchic gets a evolution all the way up into Blaziken. It's going to be flippin' amazing. I definitely think they're an S tier. They definitely deserve a ton of materials to get to 4 stars. If you've got it, they are just all around amazing. Imagine when this dude's sync grid comes out. Like, oh, it's gonna be good. Next, we actually have Misty and D tier. I'm sorry. So Misty is just doesn't have a whole lot like of anything. Like, she just, I mean, she does have a little bit of a heal mechanic in her, and she's got some special defense increase if I can remember correctly, but there's just, I never, ever think, oh, I should use Misty for this. I just don't ever, like, ever think about it. Never. Roxanne, on the other hand, actually, I do think actually deserves a pretty solid A tier here. So Wide Guard is freaking amazing. The evolution into Probopass definitely helped out with a ton of stats. All around, she is a solid unit, not a mediocre unit, definitely a solid unit. I definitely think that A tier is very respectable here. Lisa also fits into that. I definitely think that Lisa is a solid unit all around. There are no qualms that I have with Lisa. She's got some really good boosts. She's got some decent stats, and I don't ever have a problem picking Lisa. I've used her quite a bit. I don't use her that much anymore, but I've used her quite a bit, and I definitely would recommend that. Next, we do have Maylene with a good old Metatite, who can evolve into Metacham now. This one I feel like is a mediocre unit. Like, it's good. It's got some decent increases. It's good for physical attack teams. Gloves Off, if I'm not mistaken, actually increases crit rate. I want to say that that's what that does, which is actually pretty good, but just overall, it's kind of mediocre. It's not like amazing. It's not bad. It definitely does have its use cases. So I'm going to stick with the B tier on that. Cheryl, I'm sorry, but I just don't really ever use Cheryl. I don't think that it's amazing. It kind of fits in the D tier for me. It is kind of interesting that it's a dual type attacker where it can do normal and fire. It's just not really, I don't know. It's just not really good. I just don't really like it. I don't really find any reason to ever use it. Next, we actually have Marley with Arcanine. I think that Marley and Arcanine deserve a solid B tier. They are pretty mediocre. I mean, they do get a little bit of speed boost. They do get a pretty good. I don't know. Well, I would say like. So they get the speed boost, they get the special condition remover, which is actually really cool. It's only once per match, which is kind of interesting. But with a sync grid, that could actually make it even better. But without considering anything future speculative, I would say B tier is pretty strong for me. I don't really ever see myself saying, hey, I gotta use Marley because it's just all around amazing, but it's not bad by any means, and it has a lot more use cases than what I would see in the C tier there. So I would feel very comfortable leaving it in the B tier for now. Skyla, I would say like I want to put it in the B tier because I feel like I'm giving it a lot more credit, but here recently I definitely feel like Skyla is an A tier unit. I cannot wait until Skyla gets a sync grid because it's just going to get even better than that, but I feel pretty comfortable leaving it in the A tier. It's one of my favorite support units at the moment. It's one of my favorite, like, just in general pairs to go to for a lot of things, so I'm actually going to feel pretty confident leaving it in the A tier. Last but not least, for the entire 3-star pool, we do have Marlin with Caracosta. So this one is also kind of interesting. I personally feel like it falls right in line with what I would feel about Cheryl. It's got just literally nothing to like help me ever, but it's got some special defense increase. It's got a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but honestly, like I just don't really have a whole lot of strong feeling towards it. It's just nothing that I ever say, hey, I got to use Marlin. Marlin's gonna take me to the win. I just don't ever see it. So that is every single 3-star sync pair in the game rated. My personal opinion. So I actually would highly enjoy listening to your guys' opinions down below. What would you change? So if you're gonna tell me what would you change, I'd love to know your reasoning behind it. So like if you think that Roxanne deserves an S tier, or if you think that Karina only deserves A tier, whatever, drop it down in the comments and let me know why. I do understand that Battle Villa has kind of shifted a lot of things. I'm trying to take Battle Villa into consideration here, not nearly as much as I should. I'm looking at them as a neutral playing field, like, because in Battle Villa, Pikachu becomes completely and utterly amazing. Skyla gets even better. I mean, there's a lot of things that can be shifted around. This is not necessarily gonna be like strictly for Battle Villa. This is as a game as a whole, okay? As a whole, this is how I feel like these sync pairs perform on their own, without any type specific mode, like not necessarily co-op, not necessarily single player, not necessarily Battle Villa, just as they sit in the game. I really hope that made sense. But either way, let me know what you guys think of the tier list down in the comments below. We are going to go ahead and switch over and do a quick sync pair scout here. So as usual, we are going to be looking for some more copies of Red if we can get him. I'm avoiding the Grimsley and Karen banner like the plague. I don't want them, don't need them. If you want to follow along on the count of 3, we're going to go in 1, 2, 3. No flashy animation. Can we get trolled? I've gotten trolled in the last few days, so I'm feeling it. No flashy antenna, no 4-star antenna at least. What kind of doors? It is just 3-star doors, so we get a Bryson, who we talked about today. That's very fitting. Thank you, DNA. I appreciate it. But that is actually going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for watching. As always, remember that if you want to join the Discord, there's actually a link down in the description below. Also, down there are links to YouTube memberships and Patreon if that's your thing. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and head out, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.